Hello and welcome to another episode of Molby On The Spot. I'm Trev Downey. I am here in my field in beautiful rural Ireland, and I'm joined, of course, by the legend that is Mr. Jan Molby to discuss the latest state of affairs with the champions. How are you, Jan?
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, Trevor. Just excellent.
It's a great time to be alive. It's a bit of a weird time to be watching the football. Your advice to me last week, man, put your feet up, don't stress, just just enjoy the game. You don't know what way it's going to go. You had a feeling it might be very tight. In fact, pretty much spot on with your prediction, or damn close to it. And I made the mistake, man, of getting involved in it. I think an awful lot of people got distracted by an issue. We'll get to that. But the last two games, I swear to God, I am going to get a T-shirt made with that advice that you gave me, and literally just proper feed up, no stress whatsoever. Because I get the feeling, looking at the video footage of the lads that we're seeing, that they're just going to be absolutely all over the shop. How could you not be? It's kind of lovely to see it, isn't it?
Yeah, I just think somebody actually asked me the question yesterday, and I said, "Yeah, but you don't need to go to Dubai to have a drink, you know what I mean?" But that's what they've chosen to do, and so let's hope they're having a good time.
Well, you see, this is where I wanted to go with this, right? Because you obviously have experienced being a league winner and wrapping it up maybe with a game or two to go, and the pressure's incredibly off. The job is done. Last week I spoke to you about how like nerds like me would have been happy to see us just get to the 91 or 94 points for different reasons. I'd like to see Mo get all the records. These are the only things that I'm interested in at this point, but it doesn't really matter. And you can see how little it matters when the manager's off carousing in Ibiza, the lads are in Dubai. But you guys did this as well. But like you said, it was local, right? You used to go out and celebrate. Going out was a lot more common not that long ago, but it was just low key and local, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess, and you fully understand, don't you? If the lads think we're going to have a few days away, where can we go? Where obviously we're not going to be incognito, but can you imagine, like we did in the old days, if we wanted to go for a drink, we went down to Ronnie Whelan's pub. Can you imagine? Can you imagine the squad turning up in a pub in Liverpool on a Tuesday afternoon? I mean, it'd be mayhem, wouldn't it? So, I guess getting away from it is not a bad decision. And I was trying to tell you this last week, Trevor, about you said what matters, what doesn't matter. I said, well, now really nothing matters, and I think that's been proven, hasn't it? The club have completely took their foot off the pedal. I mean, they did the same leading up to the Arsenal game. Well, there was a lot of days off, isn't it? And you as a player sense that, and okay, it's not as intense as it was because it's done, isn't it? So we'll now mix the two of them, a bit of enjoyment, a little bit of training, and there's still a couple of games to go.
Yeah, I won't lie to you. I felt like an awful mug taking the game seriously at the last day because it was clear that maybe certain people weren't. And now, if we weren't sure about that, and because the reality was, Jan, they came back from their break. Was it Thursday, Friday for that Sunday game? So they had like a training session or two, and then they went into this game against, apparently our biggest rivals, our league title rivals. And now we've seen the lads with another big chunk of days off. They're not due back in till Friday, I think, and we play Monday night. So yes, the job is done. It's a lovely thing. And now to be able to embrace it is tremendous. But again, just from your own experience of it, what I've heard this spun is the manager being involved in the celebrations and everything like that, and the overt celebration, making it clear that they're doing it. It seems as if the club have said, right, let's get ahead of the game here. Go have your break now, have your celebrations now, have your nights out with the boys now, and we'll get you recovered and rested and back in the loop a little bit quicker. It could be that cynical, couldn't it?
Yeah, but I also think it's, and they're obviously making themselves visible, aren't they? So you don't kind of want to be hiding away, do you? And then all of a sudden it appears on social media, and the few of the Liverpool lads having a drink. They kind of go, okay, we've gone away. We're not making any secret about it. This is where we are. There's plenty of videos floating about, isn't there? So no, I think they made a good decision because too often in the modern day football today, we have these stories about you know, people who always got a camera and wanted to take a picture. This is, yeah, if you want a video, take it, you know. Oh, and by the way, I'm the manager, you know what I mean? Do you want me to have a little whatever Jaeger bomb or whatever it is and hooking all sorts of people they just even know? Even an ex-Evertonian's brother. I mean, that won't go down too well, Anna.
Yeah, someone needs to have a word with him about hanging out with Wayne Lineker, for the love of God. Yeah, it is. It's a lovely, lovely thing, and I've very much leaned into the enjoyment of it. I'm sure most people have at this stage. The idea of getting out ahead, of being ahead of the curve when everything is lovely too, but immediately we're into silly season as well, and so the stories won't stop. And the little early window that we have ahead of us, where there's an opportunity to buy ahead of this Club World Cup, seems to be, it has turned everything to overdrive. I've never seen so many rumors. I do a transfer show, and my God, we're inundated. It's constant. Today, even alone, there's been a couple of massive, massive stories. We will get to them as well. But I don't want to drift too far from this opening thing, because I've heard this Dubai trip being explained as the players wanting to have a farewell trip with Trent. Now, far be it for me to be a cynical man, Jan, but I'd like to put something to you, because that to me just sounded like a nice little bit of spin after the event. I could be wrong, but I would have assumed that maybe something like that might have been organized a little bit before whatever happened with Trent happened. And then maybe it was suitable to say that because it took some of the horrible sort of feel off things the way they were, which we're going to get to, folks. Don't worry about it. We'll talk about that subject. But it was weird, wasn't it? It was a farewell tour for Trent. And then again, maybe it's not, because you saw how some of the players reacted quite viscerally to him being booed.
It's the first I've heard, Trevor. I don't quite know. I don't quite know what to say. I do find it a little weak. You know, is that really what a Premier League squad would do? I don't know. As I said back in our day, when the highest profile departure we had was Ian Russ, wasn't it? And again, I'm convinced that we went down to Ronnie Whelan's pub and had a few beers and sent them off in a taxi. I've got a feeling we might have paid for a taxi back home, which at that time could have been anything up to £8. But I don't think it went any further than that, Trevor, you know. So listen, it might well be that the players felt that we should do this and say farewell to Trent, isn't it? But, you know, I'm sure there's going to be plenty of opportunity for them to catch up with Trent over the next few years.
Yeah, especially as he is heading for what is effectively a rival. And we might as well talk about this. Everyone's had their say on it. I wouldn't mind getting your take on it. I'm sure everyone's eager to hear what you have to say. We did post-match Raw immediately afterwards. And, you know, I found myself very, very reluctant to criticize anyone who pays their money and goes into a ground and they're entitled to do what they want to do. It's never been my thing to tell people how to support. I'm not a fan of booing. I don't do it myself. I wouldn't be into it. But I'm not going to look down my nose at you for doing it if you choose to do it. And people's feelings are very raw. And I did wince when I saw Trent on the sideline. And my feeling at the time was, oh, this could be. And we hadn't picked up at home on the dodgy reception he got when he came into the ground, when he got up to warm up. That didn't come across necessarily on the TV. But I did see him getting ready to come on. And my feeling was, oh, I think you've had a mare here, Arne, because there's no need for this. Now, the manager's take was, look, I'm paid to win games for Liverpool. Then he fucks off to Ibiza. But I'm paid to win games for Liverpool. So I wanted to use whatever weapons were in my arsenal. And I think, listen, there's a reasonable angle to that. But I felt he read the room wrong, Jan. I felt it was the wrong move. We didn't need to bring him on. And it really opened the kid up to the truth about how people are feeling.
Yeah, it was... was it unexpected? Yeah, I think it was unexpected. It's a bit like, I think it was 2016 when Liverpool fans walked out in protest against the rise in the ticket price. And I remember at the time because I was commentating on the game, and I said, I'm not sure he will, because it would have been the first time I've ever seen that, you know. But he did. And then again on Sunday, when I got to the ground, and I tried to speak to as many sensible people as I could, just to gauge what they thought. And I was quite taken back. People I consider to be sensible were really, really angry. And then I spoke to somebody who is really close to the team. And obviously by then we knew that Trent was going to be on the bench. And I said, well, he said, the manager is adamant that he will base it on the state of the game. We already knew that there was no way Bradley's going to play 90 minutes. So it was going to be the state of the game when he was going to be brought on. But the guy did finish off by saying, but it could be quite horrible, Jan. We're sensing that it's not going the way that we had hoped. And they were spot on. I mean, I described it as a majority-minority or minority-majority, that booed. But see, the thing is that the people who wanted to boo booed. Then loads of people didn't want to applaud him, did they? So they kept quiet. And then you had the people that... So it became a little bit of a, you boo, I don't boo. And then some people argue with the people that boo this. And that was kind of the story I was getting, the story I've been having. I mean, I was at Anfield yesterday. We're doing this on a Wednesday. I was at Anfield on Tuesday. And a fella came up to me and he said, were you here Sunday? And I went, yeah. He said, what did you do when Trent came on? I said, well, I couldn't do anything. I said, because I was working. He said, I walked out. He said, as soon as he came on, I left the ground. So, yeah, it's... so we can't control people's feelings. And you're entitled to support your club in whatever way you want, as long as it doesn't affect anyone's well-being or anyone's safety, isn't it? And that's exactly what the fans did on Sunday. I hope, Trevor, in a funny way, that they let their feelings be known, and maybe that's the end, but I just don't think it will be.
Well, it seemed to peter out towards the end to the extent that it was almost done, and the kid himself was getting into the game, even though it was cringy to hear him booed every time the ball came to him. It absolutely was cringy. It was uncomfortable, I think, for most people. And an awful lot of people were, I had this conversation, an awful lot of people were in agreement with the booing. Some people were quite indignant about it, said it wasn't very becoming or very Liverpool-like, whatever that means. And I do kind of understand what they were saying. And I'm okay with Liverpool fans debating this amongst themselves and saying what is and isn't appropriate and having their own opinions. But where I draw the line, Jan, is having to listen to smug, sanctimonious commentary from players who are now pundits, from rival teams, from the media, from journalists, even some of the Liverpool patch journalists, talking about the thing as if they're a little bit detached from the reality of what actually happened. We kept hearing the phrase about how he gave 20 years of his life. He was blessed and given an opportunity to do something that people like me dream of and never got the opportunity to do. We heard phrases like, something was lost at Liverpool that day. People like Ollie Holt, people like even Paul Joyce were saying things like this. And it just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I was thinking, you don't really get to pronounce your moral superiority in a situation like this. And then when it gets to the likes of pundits like Rio Ferdinand, you're going, what would you know about loyalty, fella? So it's really rubbed me up the wrong way. I was wondering, were you aware of it from your soaking up of whatever media you do soak up, and what was your reaction to it?
Well, obviously I was on the touchline before the game with most of them. I was in the press room before with a lot of them. I didn't see Rio Ferdinand there, but I've seen a lot of other people, and people like, because I'm an ex-Liverpool player, we were kind of in the firing line, weren't we? Foreign media are asking us what is the idea behind all this, and we kind of went back to a little bit of, maybe it's also to do with the history of the city, as a whole, and the way that Liverpool as a city feel that we can do this, but we can only do it if we stick together, and we don't do anything to harm ourselves. So I sort of ended up with what really annoyed a lot of people is the no fee situation. The fact that he's walking out the door without the club getting a fee, when we've seen in the past players at other clubs re-signing a deal with a clause in to safeguard the football club. And then I did a piece before the game, and somebody said, I don't see the problem, he said, because Trent Alexander-Arnold has cost Liverpool nothing. And I went, well, that's not the point, is it? To replace him, it's going to cost a fortune, isn't it? So that there is an issue here. So I don't know, what was that your big thing, Trevor? The fee. I mean, I've always had this thing about the loyalty is he's been loyal to his contract, hasn't he? You know what I mean? We can't knock what he's done during it. What is it that sticks in your craw? What is the big thing, Trevor?
The big one for me was, I'm very much like that. Look, footballers aren't slaves. And if you serve out your contract, you've done your duty. And the idea of the fee and all that, I understand. A lot of people, there's ways of doing things. One of the ways of doing things would be to say, hey, look, lads, I'll sign this. And then, in a year into the contract, I'll get my move. They have an unspoken arrangement, whatever. I get that. And I understand what people were saying, but that didn't stick in my craw at all. What stuck in my craw was the method in which the player himself handled himself throughout it. He was pretty anonymous for a lad who used to be quite outspoken and doing interviews and talking about how the club was everything to him and stuff. As vice captain, he became almost absent from media. Very little interviews, very little presence, putting himself out of the line of fire of any questions. And from when he knew, and he did know, and look, let's be honest, we all heard the stories in the background with his brother and the rumours, and we saw the Trent in a white T-shirt beside the Real Madrid stadium and stuff like this. It was low-key, everybody knew. Wouldn't you have had a lot more respect for the lad if he had just said, look, I'm going to Real Madrid at the end of this. It's something I want to try. But the first thing and the only thing I care about now is to get my head down and win this league for Liverpool, for the fans, for people who've been so loyal to me. It would have been bittersweet, but people, I think, would have been a lot more receptive to that. It would have been honest. It would have been open. It's what the lad did in the end, and the timing of it just felt a little bit weird as well with this Club World Cup shit coming up. Why couldn't he have kept his hat on until the end of the season? It just feels like he himself was being pushed around by a different agenda. And it certainly wasn't a Liverpool or a Liverpool fan one. Do you know what I'm saying by that? Does that sound overly emotional?
No, well, yeah, but it does. But football is exactly about that, isn't it? Football is exactly about emotional. People get emotional, isn't it? And the thing that, somebody actually said to me at the end of the game on Sunday, I felt very uncomfortable today. And I went, well, to be fair, Anfield makes you feel uncomfortable, doesn't it? It makes opposition feel. It's one of those stadiums that makes you feel uncomfortable, isn't it? Because you don't quite know what's around the corner. So some of the problems I have, Trevor, is that Trent has obviously made some statements. And he's made some statements when he was 19, 20. And then by the time you're 25, your outlook on life might have changed. But my problem with that, Trevor, is that I'm just a normal lad. Local lad, I'm Scouse. He made that a significant part of his brand, didn't he? And that is the one thing that annoys me, is that he wanted it to be part of his brand, that I'm just a normal lad from Liverpool, I'm just a Scouse, and he made that part of his brand, isn't it? And by doing what he's doing now, by all the means, when you're 19, you go, all I want to do is play for Liverpool the rest of my life. Fine. That might change when you're 25 years of age, isn't it? But the other thing about, you were so keen on being a Scouse a big part of your brand, isn't it? Then he maybe could have done things differently. When was the good time to announce? I don't know. And another thing, Trevor, is that the problem is that you're a local lad. You got your roots, but once you reach for the stars, you leave your roots behind, don't you, Trevor? That's the big thing, isn't it? So I also, to a certain extent, think that lad, when he was 19, 20, he doesn't exist anymore, does he? The Trent that was 19, 20 does not exist anymore. We have a whole different guy. We have a whole brand now, isn't it? So the interesting bit is obviously what we got left, Trevor, is that we got 2 games on the parade to go. That's the interesting thing.
In that regard, then, just get back to where we started. Do you reckon the manager made a little bit of a mistake, read the room wrong by playing?
Totally. I couldn't believe it.
And in that regard, is he involved again between now and the end of the season? Because Arnie has publicly said he will use him. does he use him away and then make sure that he doesn't even get up to warm up for the last game of the season? Because it all feels like we have to manage people's visceral reaction to a lad they feel let down by now. And I don't want him to be a distraction from what should be a happy day, because, you know, it was very much a massive distraction on the weekend.
So does he play again?
Yeah. Well,
I would say no. You know, and I totally agree with your call. He made the wrong decision. There was enough evidence leading up to the game to suggest that, you know, there was going to something happening. And then you kind of think, will there be enough people to drown out the boos? There won't be, because so many people weren't prepared to support him. So does he play again? You know, does he get to walk around Anfield with a trophy? I mean, he's deserved to be part of it all. But is it a wise decision to do when, you know, we're looking to have one hell of a party, aren't we? You know, so Sunday and Monday, it's going to be one hell of a party. So for my money, no, I don't think he plays again.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. I agree with you. I think the noise will be too big around it now. The last word on it is, you saw the reaction of the likes of Dom Szoboszlai, who was sort of gesticulating at the crowd saying, hey, well, yeah, this is, you know, and they were at pains, the lads, to show loyalty to their pal. Some of them more so than others, but you're going to have that, aren't you? People are going to be closer than, some of them are going to be closer than others. In terms of the celebration, and again, I just want, this is because we're blessed to have you here to ask this question. With any group of lads, and you got a big squad, there are going to be some lads who are tight. You have little cliques. There's going to be one or two lads who everybody dreads. This is just the nature of the thing, right? In a situation like that, would that be like a little bit of a rallying thing, or could you see maybe that there would be elements of even the player group are thinking, oh, fucking hell, this is going to be a downer now. Like, this is, you know, we have to manage this shit. We have to manage this situation. We should be just absolutely like chilling out, enjoying every minute of the last day at Anfield. And now we have to all be cringing and wondering whether people are going to be expressing, whether they're right or not, their disdain for someone, you know?
I think as a group of players, I think you're more concerned with what almost looked like spoiling at the end of the season. You know, I think all the thing with, it's like, do we have any sympathy for Trent? I almost think that maybe the booing is a little bit of a surprise, but the fact that Trent was going to get loads of criticism by Liverpool fans, and the fact that his legacy at Anfield will be great player, end of, yeah. That'll be his legacy. Great player, end of. Because, you know, reputations are often defined, aren't they, by final acts, you know, I mean, and this is his final act, isn't it? So his legacy will be great player, nothing else. But I think him and his family, advisors, whatever, would have expected all this. So I think all that has been factored into, you know, what it gives him to go to Real Madrid in terms of his signing on fee, in terms of the wages and whatever. Everything has been factored in, you know. So it's kind of one of them things that when he sits at home and he goes, this is what makes it all worth it. You know, I know I had to take some shit off the fans in it, but it's all been factored into the price, hasn't it? That's how I look at it, you know. Everything has a price to it, and go, what do you need to do to walk out on the club that your contract, or well, no longer contract? What do you need, you know? And there's a price for that, isn't it? And I just think it's all been factored into. Well, this is what we're going to give you, and you go, okay, I'm prepared to leave my football club, prepared to leave my wife, whatever. You know, as I said before, there's a price, isn't it? You know. I don't know. Do you agree, Trev, or do you think that's a bit?
I do. I think maybe as well. The guy was in quite a rarefied atmosphere, I think, in the latter years of the Klopp era. I think you'd have to say he was, if not coddled is the wrong word, he was very much sort of made to feel like the main man. The whole thing about Trent into midfield, what will we do? He was in many ways quarterbacking matches for us because he was our most creative outlet for a lot of years. And I think, you know, even we saw the vice captaincy, and there was a feeling that that was kind of like a sop to keep him interested, stuff like that. It is possible, yeah, and you said it, that people change between the ages of 18, 19, 20, and when you get to your mid-20s. And one of those changes can be an increase in ego, an increase in your sense of self. And I don't think anyone will be too surprised to find that that might actually be the truth here, that we've got a fella who's developed what we'd say around here in Ireland notions about himself, and has now got this dream to go and play with the likes of the PlayStation crew out in Madrid. And fair play. I mean, like I said, like we both said, he's served his contract, but I just think wouldn't it have been so much easier if you just come out a little bit earlier and said, here's what I want to do. I'm so grateful to you guys for all the support over the years. I want to try something new. How difficult is that? How difficult would that have been? And whereas you'll always get people pissing and moaning, and you know that. You can't. You like all you've got to do is look at a comment thread on a YouTube show. There's always people who are disgruntled about something. But most people would have been at least a lot more receptive. And I think you would have avoided things like those, that booing. Now, the link here is, of course, Madrid, because that's where he's off to. And one of the theories I've had is that the announcement came off the back of this Club World Cup and maybe Madrid putting pressure on him to say it, so that Liverpool might be inclined to take their offer to get him out of his contract early. We've heard different reports going around. 840,000 something was the number I heard that they were willing to pay to in some way extricate him that little bit early to be ready for the Club World Cup. A lot of people have it's like a moral conundrum for them. Yeah, I'd love to get your take on this. A lot of people are of the opinion that do not do anything to help those bastards. They've tapped up our player. They've disrupted a lovely, joyous occasion in terms of now we've had to deal with the fallout from this. They always do things the way they want to do. They think they're, just superior to everybody else. Don't do them any favors. Other people, I think, would be of the mindset of, milk it for whatever it's worth. And the sooner we get the lad out the door, the better, because some people are very much of that mind. Maybe the truth is somewhere in between. What's your take on Madrid and their meddling around in this?
Well, obviously, Madrid is Madrid, aren't they? And they have proven time and time again is that if there's one club who can turn even the best players in the world their heads, it's Real Madrid, isn't it? But in terms of Trent and the whole Real Madrid thing is, I'm in the camp where I'm thinking, I don't want to spend another second worrying about this. I don't want this to overshadow anything. So if they want him, there's a fee to be agreed. Off you go, and we can move on. And he can be. This is another thing in it, Trevor, because there's going to be the unveiling of Trent. There's going to be Trent playing his first game for Real Madrid, isn't it? You know what I mean? So it's like, let's not add to the circus. Let's not add to the circus.
Yeah, it just, the whole lot of it, it all just feels like a horrible, unfortunate distraction. The less of it there is, the better. Look, with that in mind, we should move away a little bit from it and focus on some more positive things, because, like we said at the very start of the show, we have a team on our hands here who are, the league's in the bag and they're off in their jollies. That's how good things are at the moment. So kind of the focus sort of changes a little bit to the other things that are still available. And we know that the relegation thing was sorted out. So I think the Premier League must be counting their lucky stars that there's such competition for the Champions League places, which at least makes the whole thing a little bit interesting. And we do have the very real situation of maybe up to 6 English players or teams involved in the Champions League next year, which is a bit wild. As you look at the table as it stands, Jan, what's your feeling for how things run in here? We've got Arsenal sitting on 68 points, Newcastle on 66, City on 65, Chelsea 63, and Villa 63, with Forest a point off that in 62. Now Forest have dropped away a little bit, but it's incremental. There's only 6 points available to everybody at this stage. What are your feelings on where the final shake-up lands, because obviously it'll depend on the fixtures. I'm not sure if you have those in front of you, but I can get those up anyway if you want to talk about that.
I've got a pretty good idea. Arsenal in second, they play Newcastle at home and Southampton away.
Yeah,
they need a couple of points, and they're going to pick up points at Southampton, even if they can't beat Newcastle. And looking at the latest with their squad and the red card against Liverpool and the injury to Trossard and whatever, they're going to find it difficult to even field 11 senior players. And Newcastle got everything to play for, because they can then seal Champions League with a win. So Manchester City are going to be okay. They found a bit of defensive stability by playing Ruben Dias and Guardiola together as centre halves. That they look really, they're not playing any better going forward as such, but they've stopped leaking goals. Newcastle, I'm absolutely convinced, will get the points to be in there as well. And I'm kind of hoping Chelsea on Friday play Manchester United. Now, it will be yet another excuse for Manchester United to play the reserves and the kids, because they got a Europa League final next week. So that's almost like a free hit for Chelsea. They're going to win that game. But I just hope that Nottingham Forest can win their game, because then at least we get a final day final in Nottingham between Nottingham Forest and Chelsea for that last, because I just can't see how Aston Villa are going to manage to sneak themselves in there. So I'm most likely to think at the moment that we're going to go with Liverpool, Arsenal, Manchester City, Newcastle, and Chelsea, which is a change from when we did it a few weeks ago, because I said Forest, and you couldn't envisage Forest, I think, losing 5 out of the last 7, only taking 4 points. You know what I mean? But that's the state they're in at the moment.
Isn't it interesting to look at the table though? And if Newcastle win their last 2 games, they will finish second.
Mm-hmm.
That is quite a remarkable situation when you look at it. And I'll be honest with you, I'll be honest, I did not see that coming. And I've wondered a lot about their coach and how long he would be allowed to stay in that job. And, when he rolled into this season, I was surprised. But you can't argue with a lad who could be about to get his team into second place with 2 wins. And
a trophy.
And a trophy, mate. And a trophy. So, I mean, it's possibly third, and a trophy is better than Arsenal finishing second. So it's already a tremendous season. And I think an awful lot of people, very much myself included, were a little bit, well, jury's out on this lad. And I don't know whether that's the reverse of the English bias that used to be there all the time, whereas now I find myself sort of bristling against that and far more receptive maybe to foreign managers, which is daft in and of itself. But you can't argue, can you? I mean, I understand they have money, they bought in great footballers, but they haven't gone big in the way that, say, City did back in the day. There is a little bit more of a structured, cohesive way to go at it. And again, unlike City, who threw a lot of money at high-profile coaches, the biggest names, they're not doing that. They're sticking with Eddie Howe, and he seems to be rewarding them.
Yeah, but I do think very much the plan was, though, the first time there's any trouble, we got a list of people we would like to replace Eddie with. But for as long as things go the way they have done, he's a safe pair of hands. I think the whole thing with Eddie Howe is that when he was at Bournemouth, he went to Burnley, that didn't work out, and then he came back to Bournemouth. And I think it's fair to say that there was a certain amount of naivety about the way that he managed and the way that he sets up his teams. And you think, will there ever be a big job for him? And then he was waiting, wasn't he? He was out of the game, and he went to Atletico Madrid and spent a lot of time with Diego Simeone, which is about small margins in the games. What can you do to affect the result? And he wasn't necessarily talking about, playing well. He was talking about the dark arts of the game. So when you look at Newcastle, there's a lot of shithousery going on at Newcastle, isn't it? Then there is in it. So if you look at the midfield 3, they are horrible to play against. Three, you know what I mean? Yeah, they're horrible to play against, aren't they? But there's a bit of Jurgen Klopp about him, isn't it? In terms of the intensity and the pace he likes to have in his team. So I have to be honest. Generally, I enjoy watching Newcastle play. How far he will at some stage come under the same pressure as Mikel Arteta. You know, and that is the League Cup is a great stepping stone for Newcastle, isn't it? But that won't satisfy people for long. I already wonder whether winning the League Cup and qualifying for the Champions League is enough for Alexander Isak. I'm not 100% convinced it is.
Yeah, well, we'll loop back around to Alexander Isak when we start talking about transfers and stuff in a little bit. And you know, hats off. Like I say, from a very humble perspective, I didn't think how would manage to get Newcastle to where they are. The other two clubs that I think most people are interested in talking about a little bit are City and Arsenal and what they are going to show next year. And there doesn't seem to be any sign of Pep Guardiola throwing a tantrum and heading off into the sunset. I think we'd have heard about it if that was going to be the case. There's already talk about who City are being linked with. We've heard Gibbs White and a few others very strongly linked with them. And today, Florian Wirtz, which we'll talk about later on in the transfer section. But obviously, they are going to throw a bit of money at it, and they can't be as awful as they were last year. And they're going to have their absolutely most important player back in the midfield, and they're going to have the scariest attacker in the league back, probably in something more normal form and normal service. So they're going to be a huge opposition for us next season, assuming that no judgment comes upon them, which is going to impact them. So a couple of parts to the question. First thing is, do you see an awful lot of cosmetic surgery that needs doing on that City team over the summer? And then that's assuming that everything stays the same. And then how likely do you think it is that we're going to see anything? There's rumors of massive points deductions, but that's all they are, Jan, rumors. And I've always been of the cynical opinion that their lawyers will just win it for them in the end and it'll be a fine. So if you wouldn't mind going there afterwards so we get a feel for where you think that's going to land. But first up, much changes needed to City, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I look at that squad and I'm thinking, 2-3 years ago, you couldn't pick holes in that squad. You'll go, we'll have a little bit of a little bit of all of them players. But now I'm looking at a group of players, and I've got a feeling that he might just decide to continue with the two centre halves that are playing together at the moment, which then means they're going to need a left back. I know they've this young kid, I can't remember his name. He's fallen into and playing left back for a little bit, but they've got no right back. I'm never convinced that Ederson is still one of the best goalkeepers in the world. I'm not convinced by that. And I look at their midfield. Obviously, Rodri coming back would be a massive big help for them. But then you've got Gundogan. He hasn't really. Bernardo Silva is another one that I'm looking at. I've never been a fan of the two wide men, Savinho and Doku. I think Mamouche, in fairness, looks a player, good energy, scores a goal or two, and Erling Haaland, but I think they got a lot of work to do. It's not going to be a case of they're going to finish 20 points behind the champions next year. But whether there'll be a serious challenge, I don't know. I still think that Arsenal will be our biggest challenger next year.
So you see a world in which Pep Guardiola, who has been a serial winner for various reasons, I'm not going to denigrate what he is as a coach, but he's very much obviously had all the advantages all the time in his various club scenarios. You see a situation where you could be looking at 2 seasons back to back where he's not winning the championship. Wow, okay, that's really interesting.
Yeah, I do, Trevor. And also, if that's going to be the case, then it's as likely it's going to be 3 or 4. Because the longer it goes, the more difficult it becomes, and the more frustrated you get. Listen, if they can go out and sign and they got money to spend, we can talk about the court case, but in terms of the FSR, they got loads of money they can spend because over the last few years they haven't spent an awful lot of money, and so they got loads of money they can spend. And if they can find themselves 2 or 3 unbelievable player, a bit like when they signed Bernardo Silva, when they signed Kevin De Bruyne, and they can Sergio Aguero, you can find players to have that kind of impact. Great, but in reality, Trevor, when was the last time they signed? We go through the signs over the last 5 years. When was the last time they made signs? You go, okay, Erling Haaland, but that was a no-brainer, wasn't it? everybody knew that was going to be the case. And Guardiola's done well, but I'm not sure he's been outstanding, but I think he's done well. This boy's coming in, and Mamouche, he's done well. But I'm looking, I think there's been so many signings. The boy from Wolverhampton, Nunez, they signed a left back, a Belgian left back, I think it was. The wide guy I mentioned before. They've signed so many players, but I'm thinking, this is not like City. So why are we now all of a sudden suggesting that their next 4 signings are going to be bang on and going to take the team to the next level? Calvin Phillips is another one, isn't he? All these signings and these are not £30 million gambles, are they? These are in excess of 50 million, and you've still got it wrong. So there's nothing that makes me think, 4 years ago, Trevor, 5 years ago, they're going, oh, here they go again, they're going to spend again, and they're going to find somebody again, you know what I mean? But I'm not thinking that at the moment. I'm thinking, yeah, they'll make signings, but I don't know. So they spent money in January, over 120 million. As I said before, Mamouche looks good, but he's not an upgrade on the boy they sold to Atletico Madrid. Julian Alvarez, no way he's an upgrade on him. Kusanov, the young centre-half right back, he's one for the future. He could be absolutely anything. And then they've signed the midfield player from Portugal. I can't remember, but he looks like Fraser Forster, the goalkeeper playing in outfield. You know what I mean? He's got terrible feet. You know what I mean? So I don't know, Trevor. I mean, can you picture that Fraser Forster playing in midfield for Manchester City? I mean, you can you? So, but that's how he looks anyway. So.
It's and of course, obviously, the big one there as well to really underline your point is Grealish. So
yeah, well, there's another one, isn't it?
So
Nathan Ake and whatever, you know what I mean? They've all done okay, haven't they? But no more than okay, Trevor. That's when you're at that level, you don't want okay, you want more better than okay.
Yeah, you're right. Gvardiol and Haaland were the 2 that I really wanted for Liverpool. But bar that, nothing too stellar in terms of that you were head scratching and thinking, oh my God, they're at it again. So yeah, very interesting, and maybe that policy will continue. And you reckon then that before we go to Arsenal, I don't want to put you on the spot or anything like that because nobody knows anything here really. But what's your gut feeling on how this goes and if it goes? Because there could be yet another delay in terms of any consequences from what we've been hearing about.
In terms of the court case?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't get it anymore, Trev. I mean, in March, it was a talking point at every ground I went to, and people are going, it's round the corner. Some people are saying the court case is finished. We've got all the evidence in, and it's just a matter of time before we get the verdict. I mean, surely this is the time, isn't it? Now has to be the time when the season's over before we get ourselves ready for the new season. How does it go, Trevor?
Don't know. I found it wild that people are thinking that there could be massive points deduction, stuff like that. I don't see that happening. I'm very cynical, especially when you're dealing with clubs that have all the money in the world. That the resources by the lawyers get you the results. That's how it works across the board in life and business. I just don't see anything.
It's a big own goal for the Premier League if they can get him, isn't it? But it's going to be difficult, isn't it?
It is, and you saw how viciously City went back against the Premier League. And if that's an indicator of how it's going to go, I think people can maybe ease their expectations about City being relegated to Division 17 or something. You mentioned Arsenal will likely be a greater challenge to Liverpool's attempt to get 2 in a row next year. An awful lot of people would say that there is cosmetic surgery needed there too. One of the first people who would say it is the manager. Their own players are crying about how they need this, that, and the other. Is the big thing they need someone to put the goals away in the middle? Is it as simple as that?
No, I don't think it is. I think they can easily. I think the balance of the whole squad is slightly wrong. They need a central striker. They need a guy to play wide left with a lot of quality. They're going to need at least 2 centre midfield players. There is a rumour that the boy we want, Subimendi, is on his way to Arsenal. But if that's the case, then okay. But that's over 50 million gone already, isn't it, Trevor? So that surely is a sizable chunk of what they have available. because I can't see Arsenal being in a position. Yes, there's a Lukonga who's out on loan, and there's a Tavares who's out on loan, and Reece Nelson and whatever, and they can maybe sell them and they get a little bit of pocket money, isn't it? But I don't see where the big sells are, so maybe there isn't as much available to Arsenal. And again, in terms of the striker, obviously Arsenal, a bit like us, is getting linked with the number of strikers that there is, and we're talking the same four, aren't we? Basically, everybody's looking at the same four, isn't it? I can't see Alexander Isak going to Arsenal if he leaves Newcastle. I'm not saying he's going to go to Liverpool because I don't know how keen we would be, but I would be more entitled to think that Barcelona and Liverpool would be ahead of Arsenal in terms of him. We're also being linked with Benjamin Sesko. I mean, he's not somebody you look at his stats and you go, wow, I can't wait to get my hands on him. But you do watch him play and you think he's got a lot of potential. So that's probably the most likely that Arsenal will go with him. They quite like the boy Nico Williams, who plays for Bilbao right on the left, the Spanish boy. But I just don't know whether they've got that type of money to spend. So it might just be more frustrating, because the one thing we've learned this year from Arsenal is that, and I will stand by this, that the starting 11, and when everybody's playing well, is a very strong team. But beyond that, and I think that's where we don't have the same drop off when we have to dip into our squad players. And to get squad players who are good enough to compete, and Arsenal's dream every year is to compete for the Premier League and for the Champions League, and you're also going to be spending 25-30 million. I mean, Arsenal also needs a reserve goalkeeper, and they're looking at a boy at Osasuna who's going to cost 25 million euros. So there's, so there's more work to need to be done at Arsenal, that's for sure. But I do think that a summer without football will do everybody the world of good, won't they? But especially the teams who's had a lot of injuries, whether that's Tottenham or Arsenal, whoever they are, and then everybody comes back fresh and firing. Because I'm looking at Arsenal, I'm thinking the players that need to find their form again: Martin Odegaard, Ben White, Saka hasn't quite looked himself since he's come back. Martinelli's lost his form, hasn't he? And then you got other people coming back from injury, like Kai Havertz and whatever. He will have to find his form again, isn't he? So yeah, we'll have to see.
It's interesting to think about what they're going to look like and what evolution might happen there. The one thing that's looking like it's going to stay stable is the manager. And I think an awful lot of people would have a lot warmer feelings towards Arsenal if it wasn't for the fact that, the online presence is quite difficult to listen to. But it seems like it's led by the manager. He seems like quite an emotional type of lad, and he's quite defensive and very much us against them. And that can work for you if you're a Mourinho type figure. But he seems more like a sort of a cross between him and Guardiola. All the sort of negative aspects, but much of the charisma part. And I just find that from what I can see, there's a real... He's not a very well liked lad, and as a result, the side is not a very well liked side, and it is unfortunate because they've done very well. They are a very good football team with some tremendous footballers, getting to where they got in the Champions League, likely being top 2-3 in the Premier League. With, you have to say, dealing with quite a few injuries, a bit overblown as a cause for what happened to them. But they are a very, very good side. And I assume putting all those things together and the quality of the player that they have and the fact that they do seem very loyal to this lad, that's probably why you're saying they're going to be there or thereabouts again as the biggest rivals.
I think they will be, Trevor. And just coming back to, and they are getting a lot of stick, Arsenal, and there's not a lot of people like them. And I find that because when you look at people like Saliba and Declan Rice and Bukayo Saka and whatever, these should be likable footballers, shouldn't they? They come across as inoffensive. They're just good footballers. They're very competitive. They get on with it. The only thing I will say up against Mikel Arteta is that as a player, Trevor, he was unbelievably popular, amongst his teammates, the clubs that he was at. And at Arsenal, wherever people think, he is unbelievably popular. People adore him. You go down to Arsenal, from the woman who serves the food and whatever, it's all Mikel. He's wonderful, So there's a lot of respect for him. And sometimes I do wonder whether some of the things he says is a little bit of an act. He says things to take the pressure away from the players and he goes, I can take it, So this is a guy that was made captain of two of the clubs he played for. He's now the manager at Arsenal. So I actually happen to think that Arsenal are really, really happy with him. If they look back to where the starting point was when he came in and to where they are now, I think they're quite pleased. I know that people will point to the fact that he spent in excess of 800 million, but Arsenal will probably point to the fact that the wage bill is he's still overperforming their wage bill. And I think that's the one thing they look at and go, we're quite happy with this boy. Well, of course, he's on the clock now, isn't he? He's on the clock. And even Arsenal will be putting on the stopwatch now and going, okay, you know what I mean? Because we can't forever be, we need to take that next step. And at some stage, you will have to evaluate whether he's the guy to do that or not. And I do doubt, I'm not 100% convinced that he's the guy to get him over the line. But I do think he's done a good job.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because the fans I see are remarkably loyal to him. They're hugely supportive. Social media has been full all week of how Arsenal have this incredible record against the top six as if it's a trophy. They're going out of their way to show how they've done well and maintain consistency. So yeah, there's obviously a huge loyalty to this fella. Just before we get to a quick Brighton prediction, because we're not going to analyze that much too much, because clearly Arne Slot and the boys aren't analyzing it too much. But there are a lot of transfer rumors knocking around, and we've already had 2 or 3 people in the comments, at least one lunatic and 1 or 2 other people coming in going, hey, what's all this about Wirtz? Listen, Jack does the headlines based on what's in the news at the moment, and it changes. That's what news is. It changes. So yes, the Florian Wirtz story was big earlier on, yeah, and apparently he spoke to Liverpool with his family and representatives, and the whole story was something and nothing, because clearly Bayern want him, and if Bayern wants you and you're in Germany, seems to be the way that we can predict how that's going to go. So taking that out of it, the other story that's kind of inescapable is Jeremy Frimpong, and it turns out that an awful lot of those stories were based on things being said and put out there by a fella who's not actually Jeremy Frimpong's agent. He is connected to him, but not his actual agent. So this is, like I said, silly season. Let's take the names out of it for a second and have some sort of slightly calm conversation about if Arsenal need a bit of surgery, if City need a bit of surgery. Well, Liverpool, we know, are going to need it because we know we have outgoings. And it's also, I would have thought, very logical to give this lad a chance to use a sort of military thing, if he's a general, to build his own army, to use his own weapons and, create an Arne Slot team to an extent. It may take a few seasons, but to allow him to begin that process, because he's won the league with somebody else's team, and the only new person that came in was never played at all, never used. So it feels like there's a lot of work to be done there. Now, we've kicked around where it needs to be done, but it's obvious, really, it's going to have to be in attack, where one of our big name strikers, if not a couple, will be on the move. And we're going to have at least 1 or 2 defenders walking as well. And we're going to need other bits and bobs. Some people say we need a 6. I'm one of those, as in a defensive midfielder, a proper defensive midfielder. When you look at the Liverpool team squad, really, at the moment, where do you see the work that needs doing to take us to the next level? And who do you think are the likely candidates for the exit?
I've just got this idea, Trevor, that if Liverpool only made 1 signing in the summer, it would be a right back. I just can't see Liverpool starting the next Premier League season without a right back. And I'm not suggesting that it's a first choice right back or a second choice right back, but I just can't see Liverpool going into the next season with Conor Bradley and Joe Gomez as the 2 options as right backs. So, I think it's a priority that we sign somebody. I do find the Jeremy Frimpong link a little strange, because to me it looks like a marauding fullback that struggles to defend and won't win you many headers, but got unbelievable pace. And then people go, yeah, but he can also play further forward in Mo's role. Yeah, he can, but as long as Mo is there, nobody plays in that role, really, because he's available every single game. So I don't know how much sense that makes. Centre half is the interesting one. I've often said, well, we've often said both of us, that how Arne Slot rates the players has been pretty easy to read. The one I can't quite get a read on is Kwanzaa. There's this link with other clubs being interested, Newcastle being one of them, and us maybe not being prepared to sell, which makes me think that Arne is thinking there's a future in him. So we might not be desperate for the centre half because Joe Gomez. And again, I don't know about Joe, whether Joe will stay or go or not. And then we've got the left back situation. At the moment, we got two, which means we won't bring anyone in, but I think we're hoping to shift one of them to bring somebody in. And we've obviously been strongly linked with the boy down at Bournemouth. And I said last week on the show, I think this is happening. And then I was told at Anfield on Sunday, and I don't know whether it's the right figure or not, but somebody went 45 million for a left back. And that made me think again, when have we ever spent that type of money on defenders? People go, Van Dijk and Konate and whatever. Yeah. Well, Konate was cheaper, wasn't it? Van Dijk, but that was exceptional, wasn't it? So that made me just think, because it just looked like an open goal, didn't it? To go and get the boy at Bournemouth, and then somebody very connected went, 45 million for the left back again. So that made me think a little bit. Midfield, I'm not overly concerned. I want a midfield player, but I'm not bothered whether it's 6 or 8. I can live with either, but I do think we need somebody, whoever that is. I mean, we spoke briefly last week about the boy at Stuttgart and a few others, isn't there? And up front is the interesting. Up front will take shape once we know who we might be able to move on, isn't it?
Who we might be able to move on is the thing, and I think those stories are going to become very clear very soon, so just hold your horses, folks. I just have to ask you about one thing before we finish up, and we'll just, like I said, we'll keep the Brighton talk to an actual prediction just for the crack, because it's what we do. But I heard you may have been involved in some competitive sport yourself of late, Chief, and this might be a string to your bow that people are not aware of. I happen to know you're quite handy at this particular game because we've spoken about it before, you and I. But would you care to tell people about your time on the Oki recently?
Yeah, it was an event at Anfield. It was the LFC Foundation, a charity event sponsored by one of the biggest bookmakers in the world, and there was 8 players, a couple of former world champion Stephen Bunting, who currently is number 4 in the world, and the 2008 BDO world champion Mark Webster. And then there's a couple of county players. County players at darts are, they are just a level below. Unbelievable. And then there was a few sort of celebrities. Darren Gough, the cricketer from Yorkshire, Chris Kirkland, former Liverpool, and Keogh, singer, DJ for Boss Nights. And then there was me. It was a great night, fantastic setup, Trevor, unbelievable. And obviously with all the songs and professional callers and the boys. I was lucky in the draw. I got to play the singer struck DJ Keogh, and I beat him 2-0. Before in the semi-final, I got beat 2-0 by Mark Webster.
Fair enough.
So, it was fair enough, isn't it? Fair enough, isn't it? So, but it was a really enjoyable evening. And the big thing for these nights, I think, is that Stephen Bunting, who's a big Liverpool fan, and you couldn't believe he was playing darts at Anfield, but he was the one after he went, this is a really good event. Now, he's used to going around doing a lot of events, and this is a really good event, he said. And he said, we should make this annually,
wow.
That way he'd be able to help with some of the other big names in the sport. See, the thing is, Trevor, that Anfield is always a big pull, isn't it? Yeah, come and play darts at Anfield. It's a big pull wherever you are, isn't it? So I think it'll be an annual event. It was really, really good fun. I don't know how it works with people among the best in the world playing against people who really can't play darts. But I think people enjoyed it to a certain extent. We all had our walk-on with our walk-on music, and I walked on to "Don't Stop Me Now" by the Queen, and it was good fun. It was really enjoyable.
I insist on seeing that live the next time.
Yeah.
And just to change the tone a little bit more serious towards the end, just the last question. I'll be killed by Eddie Gibbo if I don't ask you this. Most people have seen that you were part of a panel pitch side there recently with David James and Peter Schmeichel. And there was a video going around and an awful lot of people were just absolutely shaking their heads going, what is this lad talking about? Where David James is talking to the presenter and Schmeichel kind of cuts across and points at his lapel and says, what's this? And he's pointing at a little badge. And now I'll have to say, I thought David James cut him pretty dead and he looked quite miffed. He looked quite disgusted that this lad, who's his fellow pro, didn't know what it was all about. He didn't give him any great explanation. He just said Hillsborough, 97, turned away. I noticed your own reaction was to kind of look down, like, don't want to get involved in this guy. Was it a situation where he just basically made a show of himself by accident? He really didn't know what he was talking about? Because that's what we all want to believe.
Yeah, I think so, Trevor. You know, I didn't sense somebody who was being disrespectful. You know, I sensed somebody who looked and maybe at an angle, because we were all standing in a line, you know, and he's seen something on David James's lapel and he's gone, excuse me. And he has a tendency to do this, Peter, you know what I mean? When other people are talking, he has a tendency to butt in and go, and he's gone, what is that? And obviously the moment he said that, I was standing at the end. And I just thought, no, I'm just going to keep my head down here. There's nowhere to go with this.
No, there's nowhere to go.
There's nowhere to go with it. And obviously, if you have any affiliation with certainly with Liverpool Football Club, you would find it strange that he wouldn't know. The only guy who can explain it is himself. Is himself. But the big thing for me, Trevor, was that he didn't look like it was somebody being disrespectful. He was being inquisitive about something he wasn't sure about. And this is the thing, isn't it, Trevor, that when you sort of step out of your position during these things, isn't it, you can often end up looking a bit silly, you know, because he could have just carried on. We were just about to have an advert break, and it would have been so much easier, wouldn't it? But, you know, Peter is cut from a different cloth.
Yes. I think we may have mentioned that before. Right, sign off, buddy. I've kept you a couple of minutes over the time. The game at the weekend, with all our drunk lads and Arne still in Ibiza mode, how do you reckon it goes against Brighton?
Yeah, it's difficult to say. I think Brighton have regressed this season. I think early on in the season we thought they managed to pick another really, really top manager. I don't think they have. I think apart from a 4-match winning streak early in the season, their level really have been 15, 16. That's how average they've been. I'm not a big fan. I think they got a lot of good players, but they're not getting the most from the players. So I think even with the Dubai celebrations and if Arne Slot can find his way back to Liverpool, I think we'll be okay. I actually think it might just be one of those end of season games, you know, that ends Brighton 2, Liverpool 3.
Oh, that would be just tremendous fun. That's what we'd all love. Get yourself out of the clutches of Wayne Lineker, Arne, and get yourself back home. Thanks to Jan, a fantastic show, a lot squeezed in there. Even kept the man late after he started early. Appreciate his time. Thanks to you in the chat. Thanks to you for watching live. Big numbers as always. And last week's numbers were fantastic on the watch through. So thousands of you out there. Appreciate you. Take care.